everyone, welcome to the OklaRoots YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, we're gonna make something that's for all you book lovers out there, specifically you book lovers who actually like a hard copy, turn the page book, but you want to keep it protected and you want to make it look really cute while it's in another bag or when you're just carrying it around. Today, we're gonna make the book sleeve, and this pattern comes to us from Sewn Ideas. I love this little sticker. Okay, let me just tell you, there are so many books that just came out recently. If you're on Book Talk, if you're in the fantasy world, you know that there are so many new releases that keep coming out. Personally, I'm a Kindle girl. I like reading all my books on the Kindle. However, I do also usually like to have a hard copy of the book, and especially when I'm traveling, I will bring my Kindle with me and a hard copy book, because sometimes if I finish a book on my Kindle and I can't get internet access, I gotta have a backup, right? What else am I gonna do? So this little sucker is so quick and easy. You are gonna love it. It has two sizes. This is a size small. We're gonna make the size large today. So let's just walk through it. On the front here, we have a snap tab. You can use a magnetic snap here if you'd like. You could also use Velcro. I'm not gonna be going over Velcro, but it is an option. Then we have a slip pocket right here, which is really nice for the Kindle, and I'll show you that in just a minute. And then we have a zipper pocket here, which would be great for little notes, for your pens and pencils. Maybe, I don't know, I'm just fantasizing while it's freezing here in Florida, but maybe you're on a cruise or something and you're gonna go to the spa, or you're gonna find yourself a nice little place to lay out. So you could put your ID, maybe your phone in here, Kindle, book. Can you tell where I'd like to be right now? So this is a size small, and I'm gonna show you kind of how I can use it. So I have one hardcover book in here, and I'll tell you that the measurements of this book are about 5.5 inches wide, 8.5 inches tall, so 5.5 by 8.5, and about 1 3/4 of an inch deep, thick. So if I put this in here, in this size small, it fits perfectly. It's nice and tucked in, nothing crazy. However, I can't really get my Kindle in here with it. I mean, I could, but it's a very, very, very tight fit, and I would not want to damage my Kindle. So if you have a bigger book like this and you want to carry your Kindle with it, I would probably suggest a size large. But let's see, I have another book. It's a little bit not as wide. So here's another book. This is a paperback book, and it's still, I mean, you see, it's very thick still, but you can see it is a bit shorter and narrower than the other book. So if I put that in my book sleeve like that, and then I grab my Kindle and I just slide my Kindle right here in the pocket, and I would say I have a pretty big Kindle. Let me see what size my Kindle is. My Kindle is 5.5 inches wide by about 6.5 inches tall. So it is a bigger Kindle, I believe. So I'm just gonna slide that right in there, and then I'm gonna button it up. And then for me, I usually like to have like a pen and a highlighter. I am one of those people that likes to take notes. I would also usually have like little sticky tabs, and I could stick those in this pocket as well. Just tuck it in, zip it up, and there we go. Somebody put me on a stinking cruise ship, please, because I'm ready. So thank you so much to Sewn Ideas for allowing me to use your patterns on my channel. If you haven't checked out Sewn Ideas, please go do so. I love her patterns so, so, so much. So Sewn Ideas patterns are so well written. They are always thinking of the beginner. They are very beautiful, but also pretty simple. If you want to add more to them, you can, but you don't have to. One thing I especially love in her patterns is that she does give you photos of every single step, but in her pattern, she uses a different solid color material for every single piece of the pattern. That is so helpful when you're starting out and you're not quite sure which piece is what goes where. Having a different solid color for every piece, I don't know. To me, it was like, this is the best idea ever. Why don't we all do this? If you're new to the OklaRoots YouTube channel, please consider clicking subscribe down below. If at any point you like this video, please give it a like. Any questions, comments, shout outs, leave them down in the comments section. If there's something else on the Sewn Ideas website you'd like to see, let me know. I'm gonna be honest, I'll put a playlist around here or down there. There'll be a playlist somewhere. I have done a lot of Sewn Ideas patterns. I would say I probably have done videos for most of her patterns because they are just a go-to pattern source. Like, I know it's gonna turn out great. I know it's gonna be easy to make. I don't have to worry about it. I know it's not gonna take me 2 days to figure out what's going on. So if you haven't tried Sewn Ideas patterns before, anyone on the site is gonna be perfect. You're gonna love it. All right, guys, let's get started. Okay, so for the large size book sleeve, you're gonna need about 1/2 yard of outer material. And now I'm gonna mix it up between these two. I like the pocket to be a contrast, like a print, and then the main front and the main back to be a solid. I'm using a nylon material for both of these. I believe this one here is called a Theralux. I think it's a Theralux. It's from Fabric Therapy. There are a few different nylon options over there, like a Theratex and a Theralux. They both work fantastic for bags. And then this is, I believe, a Polytech from Indo Love Creations. Also still a nylon. Both of these are nylon-like materials with a kind of like interfacing on the back that's just applied already. For the lining, you're gonna need about 3/4 yard of material, and I will be using water-resistant canvas for that. The difference between waterproof and water-resistant canvas is that water-resistant canvas is thinner, more lightweight, doesn't have a really heavy coating on the back, so I do prefer that for bags. I'm not gonna be using any interfacing today. For the large size, you're gonna need at least 11 inches of zipper tape. This is a number 5 zipper tape, so make sure you have a zipper pull to go with that. And then you're gonna need some sort of a fastener for that flap. I will be using a set of fashion snaps. I use this with my rivet press. So here's most of the other stuff. Since I'll be using that fashion snap, I have my rivet press with the associated dies to set it. I have a hole punch as well to go with that fashion snap. For my thread going through the top needle, I will be using this Wizardry Stitchery color Dusty Rose. This is a Tex 45 weight thread. I do like this type of thicker thread to go through the needle. However, I do not use this in the bobbin. In the bobbin, I use a polyester Gutermann thread, something a little bit thinner. My needle is a Microtex 8012. I have a stiletto to help hold things in place at the sewing machine, a turning wand to poke out those corners, good amount of plastic clover clips. I have some 1/4 inch double-sided tape, my bag tag as always, a good 1 inch by 6 inch ruler. I like to have 3 marking tools at all times. I have a chalk marking tool, an erasing pen, and a silver ink pen. You just really never know which one of these you're gonna need. The chalk and the erasing marker can be used on any material, anywhere, and you can't erase it. The silver ink pen needs to be kept in the seams. Unless you're using vinyl, then you can use it wherever you want and wipe it off later. And then, as always, a lighter to help clean up those loose threads. So let's go through these pattern pieces. Depending if you're using size small or size large, the pattern piece number might be a little bit different. The size large ones, they just start with 1 0. The size small ones are just 1. So pattern piece 1 is the same as pattern piece 101, just one's for the small, one's for the large. So from pattern piece 101, I have 2 cuts of lining, and then I also have 2 cuts of my outer material. So the pattern says 1 cut of outer fabric and then 3 cuts of lining, but one of them is going to be, we need 2 cuts for the exterior, and I like them both to be the same color, so that's why I mixed up mine a little bit. Pattern piece 102 is going to be that front accent pocket, and that is 1 cut of my accent material. When you're cutting out these angled pieces, make sure you pay very close attention to which side the template should be facing and which side your material should be facing. Your material should be right side up. Your paper pattern piece should also be right side up when you're tracing this out. Don't flip it around, then you're gonna have to recut everything. Next, I have pattern pieces 103 and 104. These are both going to be lining pieces, and these are going to be for the back of that front pocket. And then finally, I have pattern pieces 105, 106, and then pattern piece 7 is the same for both the large and the small. So 105 is going to be, again, the back of the slip pocket for your front accent pocket. So I'm using an outer material for that. It can be any material, honestly. And then pattern piece 106 is going to be the top of the zipper pocket on the front. So it's just that little strip that goes right above the zipper. It's a thin piece here. So I'm using the accent material for that. And then for the strap, I am using 2 pieces of my accent material. If you would like to use a piece of Decoville Light here that's a little bit more narrow, you definitely can. I'm not going to, but I will be using scraps of Decoville Light to help beef up the snaps. So let's start with the flaps. You're going to grab your 2 flap pieces and you're going to lay them right sides together. And you might notice that I have 2 pieces that are kind of opposite directions. Like this one's upside down. So that way when they're wrong sides together like this, the front of the flap will be like that. When you lift it up, you have a cute little heart. Just something to think about if you have a directional print. So I'm just going to lay these right sides together, and then I'm going to grab some clips, and I'm going to clip along the sides and that bottom rounded corner, but I'm not going to clip along the top straight edge. So now we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to sew along the sides and the curved bottom at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Go really slow around that curve to make sure it doesn't get all wonky. If your stitches are all over the place, it's going to show in the end. So take your time around that bottom curve. Backstitch at the beginning and the end by the top straight edge, but don't sew over the top straight edge. All right, once you have that sewn down, I'm going to just cut off the corners of this, and then I'm going to take my scissors and I'm just going to cut little perpendicular slits into the raw edge of the seam, getting close to the stitches on the curved edge, but I'm not actually cutting any of those stitches. And now we're going to turn this right side out. And I don't know if you've seen before, but we've done videos where we use an embroidered snap tab. That is another option here. That would be really, really cute. So you can have a lot of fun with this tab piece right here. You can keep it as is in the pattern, or you can get really creative with different shapes and sizes. You have a lot of freedom here. Just try to keep it generally the same length as this, but other than that, you can have, like I said, a lot of fun. So I'm just taking my turning wand and I'm just pushing out around that seam. Now the material I'm using isn't going to do a whole lot if I iron this. If you're using a quilt cotton, you definitely can iron around this curve to hold it in place. But this is actually going to work better if I just use my fingers and clips. So I'm just going to go around after I've used my wand. I'm going to just press the seam to get it to the shape I want. And this can take a little bit of time. Just make sure you take the time to do this. I feel like you can always tell when somebody rushed through a sewing project, because there's all kinds of wonky little stitches and seams that honestly, if you just would have taken a minute longer to really smooth it out, it would look completely perfect. So now once you have this flattened out the way you want it, we can top stitch along the sides and the curved bottom edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so now we're going to attach the snaps. If you were doing the Velcro, then you have different steps for this. What we want to do is we want to attach one of our snaps 3/4 of an inch up from this bottom rounded corner. The template does have a marking point for that, but remember that the pattern piece with the template also has a seam allowance in it, so don't just lay it over here, it won't match up. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to fold my little tab in half like this to find the midpoint along the bottom curved edge, and then I'll just use my air erasing marker to mark it. And then I'll grab my ruler and I'll just measure up 3/4 of an inch from that bottom edge and mark my placement. So now I'm going to take my hole punch and I'm going to punch through that dot through both layers of my tab, because my little snap is going to go through both of it. And then I'm also going to just punch through a scrap of Decovil light. Now it can be any type of interfacing. It can be fusible fleece, Decovil light, even another piece of your material. Just something to beef up the snap a little bit, because I'm not using any interfacing here. So we want to use the female portion of this snap. This is going to have the cap and it's going to have like a little donut shape. The cap part's going to go on the exterior. So if you have a preference on which one's the exterior, it's going to go there. But before I push it all the way through, I kind of want to open it up a little bit. And I want to insert my piece of Decovil light between those two layers. And if you put a hole in your Decovil light like I did, you can't seem to get it all to line up, just shove your Decovil light in there so it's between the two layers where you see the hole on the material, so you can see it, and then just pop the hole in it again. That's what I did. So top of my little tab has the cap on it. The bottom side has that donut on it. I'm just going to grab my rivet press setting tool here and just set that. Super quick and easy. There we go. So now I have my little snap installed on the tab. And now we're going to install the snap on the main body piece. So I'm going to switch out the dies since I'll be installing the male end. So now grab your outer panel, panel 101 or 1, depending on which size you're using. This is going to be on the front of your book sleeve. That's where we're going to install the male end of our snap. So once again, I have a piece of Decovil light just to help stabilize it. I marked the midpoint along the top edge, and then I measured 1.5 inches down, and I'm going to grab my hole punch, and I'm just going to punch where that dot is. And then I'm going to take my male set of snaps. So one is kind of like a long pokey bit and one's like a short nubby pokey bit. And I'm going to insert the long piece through the Decovil light and then through the back of my main panel. So it pokes through the front just like that. And then we put the shorter one on top of it. They're not going to snap together, so you're going to have to kind of hold them while you grab your rivet press if you're using one and just press them down. There we go. Easy peasy. So you see when our snaps go together, oh, that's gonna look pretty, isn't it? These colors are gonna be so pretty. Good job, Mila. And now don't get confused on this set. This is like the front main panel and this is the back main panel. We want the back main panel, not the one that has the snap on it. You're gonna lay this right side up and then you're gonna grab your snap tab and mark the midpoint along the top edge. So you can use a pen if you'd like. I always like to use scissors because I can see it from both sides. And then you're going to lay your tab so that it's donut of your snap side up. Okay, so like right side down. The front that you're gonna see in the end, that's facing down. The underside of your tab is facing up. And then match up those midpoint marks on the top edge. And if you forgot to mark a midpoint mark on your back panel, do that now. And then use your clips to clip these together. So now we're gonna go to the sewing machine and just baste along this clipped edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, your back panel can be set to the side. Okay, so now you need pattern pieces 102, 103, 104, and 106. If you're using the small, it's just 2, 3, 4, and 6. I like to keep everything clipped together because there are so many, pieces that look so similar. It's just gonna be easy if you keep the pattern piece clipped to what you're working on. So you're gonna grab piece 103, which is this one. And we're going to lay it right side up. So I can take this off now. And then grab your zipper. And when the zipper closes, it's going to close towards the right. I know it doesn't, just go with it. The zipper closes towards the right. The zipper's going to close going down in the end, okay? So we have our lining panel face up, zipper face up, zipper closes towards the right. If you have a really long piece of zipper tape like I do, you can just get it closer to one edge and clip these together, both facing right side up. I always like to have a little bit of zipper overhang on the sides, so I'm just gonna trim this down like that. And now we can take this to the sewing machine and let's just baste along this clipped edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Next, grab pattern piece 102, which is your front pocket panel or accent outer panel, whatever you're using. And you're gonna lay this right side down, so it's right sides together with the lining, right sides together with the zipper. And line up those top corners, okay? Everything on this top edge should line up exactly. No overhang of corners yet. We will do that in a future step. So if you already know, when you have angles like this, you have to have some kind of shifting. That's not this step. So now we're gonna go to the sewing machine and sew along this edge using a zipper foot at a 3/8 inch seam allowance, which is close to the zipper teeth. Honestly, I think you could do a 1/4 inch if you'd like, but I'm gonna do a 3/8 inch seam allowance, backstitch at the beginning and the end. So now if you wanna use an iron for this step, you can, but you're gonna press that accent panel up and away from the zipper, and then you're gonna pull the lining back and press that away from the zipper as well. And what I like to do is match up these bottom corners of these two panels and just clip along those corners. I feel like that helps me straighten out that seam by the zipper a lot easier. All right, so then I can just so I'm gonna close the zipper as much as I can so that the full zipper teeth is closed. And I'm just gonna pull it gently away from the material and just finger press along that seam. Now, depending on your material, you might not be able to get it very flat. Like I said, if you wanna use an iron, you can do that, but I'm not going to. I'm just gonna finger press it. So you see now when the zipper closes, it's gonna close towards the left, but it goes down. So now we're gonna take this to the sewing machine and we're going to just top stitch right along the seam on the accent material at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now you're gonna take pattern piece 104, which is a lining piece, and you're gonna lay it right side up. And then you're gonna take your unit with the zipper and you're gonna lay it right side up as well, accent panel right side up, linings right sides together, and you're gonna match them up along the top edge here by the zipper. And they should match up on the bottom as well. However, if they don't, that's okay. Just focus on matching up the sides. So make sure the sides come together and line up, and then the top edge of your zipper tape matches up with the top edge of that back lining panel and clip together. All right, so once you have that clipped in place, we're gonna go to the sewing machine and baste along that top clipped edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So now we're gonna grab pattern piece 106. Now, make sure you know how it's supposed to go in the end. It's gonna be like this, okay? Just like that. It's not gonna be like, actually, I guess it's the same, isn't it? I didn't even think about that. So it's gonna be like this. You can't really mess this up unless you cut it wrong. So what we're gonna do is we're going to lay this top piece right side down, right sides together with the zipper. But here's the thing, over here on the left, this corner on the top, I want this to overextend the side by 3/8 of an inch or a 1/4 of an inch, whatever your seam allowance is going to be here. So whatever you sewed on the bottom edge here, you're gonna sew on the top. And this top corner needs to overextend by that much. So my seam allowance for here on the bottom of the zipper was 3/8 of an inch. So I'm gonna line up my ruler over here and I'm going to mark 3/8 of an inch past where the top corner is here of my back panel. So you see this like white corner of my back panel? I'm measuring 3/8 of an inch past to the left of that. And then I'm gonna line up this other piece here, and I'm going to make sure that the top corner goes to that 3/8 of an inch mark. This is working with angles, because when you pull this up, you see if I pull this up at 3/8 of an inch, now my sides will line up. If this is over 3/8 of an inch to the right, when I pull this up, it's going to be over a lot. You see what I'm saying? So let's talk about the right side over here. On the right side now, see this top corner that we've already basted down? That's going to extend 3/8 of an inch past this top corner of my thinner piece. So just measure that out, make sure it works. Here we go, and I'm gonna clip that in place. And now I'm just gonna clip along this top edge. So if you're a quilter, you probably know all about this. Quilters have to work with these kind of weird angles a lot. And if you don't get it lined up correctly, it doesn't look correct, because it's not. Okay, so now that I have that clipped in place, I'm gonna sew along this top clipped edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end. So now that you have that sewn on, you can iron, finger press, however you need to do it. Press that top panel up, get it nice and firm. We're not doing anything with the lining panel, we're leaving that down. Just press this top panel up, and now we're gonna top stitch right along this top panel at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so this is what it should look like, and the sides should line up. Again, if you find that your top piece is shifted over quite a bit and it's too short on this side and it's too long on that side, then you didn't overextend the corners like we went over in great detail. So now I'm going to just trim down my zipper tape so that it all lines up on the edges and I don't have any overhang. Now we're gonna grab pattern piece 105. You're gonna lay your pattern piece 105 right side up, and then you're gonna take your whole zipper unit, and with the zipper, you're gonna take the zipper facing right side down, and you're gonna line up along this top slanted edge. Again, the materials are all right sides together, and clip along that top diagonal. And now we're gonna sew along this top clipped edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, back stitch at the beginning and the end. Now you're gonna flip that zipper panel and that back panel we just sewed on, and we're gonna flip them right sides together. So however you wanna press that top diagonal, go ahead and press it. If you want to use an iron, do that. If you wanna just use your fingers, you can do that. I'm gonna work on clipping the sides down so that those are lined up, and then I'm just gonna finger press the top and use clips. Don't worry so much about the bottom here. If things don't line up, that's okay. We can trim it down. That's the nice thing about this pattern is you can really be kind of sloppy with your measurements and it's still gonna turn out really nice. It's a great, great, great beginner pattern. Okay, just take a second to make sure everything's lined up on the sides. That's where things can start getting really twisted. And now we're gonna go to the sewing machine and we're just going to top stitch right along that top diagonal seam at a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I would back stitch at the beginning and the end to hold it in place. All right, so once you have that top stitch, let's look at the back here, and we want all the edges to match up as best as possible. If it's a little messy, that's okay. But what we're really focused on is the bottom edge. So line up your side seams, and I would just use clips to hold the side seams together. Okay, now, and I'm just looking at the bottom here. I have a tiny bit of overhang from that front pocket panel, so I'm just gonna trim that down. If it's, an 1/8 of an inch, I wouldn't worry about it too much, but our seam allowance later is a 1/4 of an inch, so it's not very big. So you do wanna make sure all these edges line up pretty well. Okay, now before we move on, I'm gonna remove all my clips because I want to add my bag tag. So I'm gonna find the midpoint on the bottom edge of my accent pocket here. None of this stuff is basted together yet, so I can easily just pull this panel away from everything. And then I'll use scissors or some sort of a marking pen to find that midpoint mark. Now I'm gonna grab my bag tag and I'm gonna put some double-sided tape on the back of it. Or if you're using a metal bag tag, oh, I should have used my metal bag tag actually. I'm running low on these tags. Next time. Now I measured 2 inches up from that bottom midpoint mark, and that's where I decided to put my tags. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull all the other material away from just this one accent panel. And I'm gonna go to the sewing machine and I'm going to top stitch along all 4 edges of my bag tag at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, so once you have your bag tag, you're gonna lay your pocket piece right side up and then grab your main front panel that has the snap attached. And you're just going to line up your pocket with the bottom corners and line up the sides just like this. Oh, it's slippery. So I'm just gonna do this one corner at a time and then clip along the sides and the bottom. Isn't this pretty? colors are so nice. Okay, so now we're gonna go to the sewing machine and we're just gonna baste along the sides and the bottom at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance to hold this beautiful pocket in place to our main panel. All right, so now you have your front and back exterior panels and your 2 lining panels. We didn't do anything fancy with the lining panels. I love that. We don't need pockets everywhere all the time. So you're gonna take 1 lining panel and 1 exterior panel, both of them like this, and you're gonna lay them right sides together, focusing on the top edge. So if you have a directional print for your lining, think about that now. And we're gonna clip these top edges of the exterior and the lining right sides together. So repeat this for the other set of lining and exterior panel. And now we're gonna take both of these to the sewing machine and we're gonna sew along these top edges at 1/4 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end of each one of them. Okay, so now I'm gonna cut these top corners at a 45-degree angle, maybe even a more shallow angle, because it can get, I mean, it's not that bulky when we sew this together later, but it can be depending on your material. And if you were using a vinyl or some sort of a heavy material, I would actually sew these at a 3/8 inch seam allowance, not a 1/4 of an inch. So now you want to press open these seams, and honestly, I'm just going to finger press them, but only on the edges, because pressing open the seam, you know, at this tab is kind of a pain. So just give it a finger press open the seams, and lay these out so that the lining and the exterior are pulled away from each other. So you have nice big rectangles now. So now take one of your units here and lay it right side up, and then take your other unit and lay it right side down. And it's gonna be lining right sides together, exteriors right sides together. Start with the seam first, match up the seam, and if you wanna press the seams open to flatten it out, that's always a good idea. If you clipped them like I did, you could honestly just kind of press them in opposite directions. Whatever's easiest. If you cut them, then you don't really have a whole lot to press open. We just want it to be thin. So I'm gonna do this on both sides, just matching up the seam. That's the most important part here. And then go to the exterior side, match up the corners, and then just clip along all the edges of the exterior side. And then once you have the exterior clipped together, we're gonna do the same thing with the lining side. Once again, just starting with the bottom corners and then clipping along the long edges. All right, on the bottom edge of the lining side, you're gonna wanna leave at least 5-inch opening on this bottom edge. So if it's the large size, you could probably make it a little bit bigger. I'm just gonna do 5 inches. And now we're gonna sew this at the sewing machine. I'm gonna switch it up just a little bit from the pattern, just because just working with lining sometimes. My lining is very stiff since it's a water resistant canvas. So what I'm gonna do is on my lining sides, I'm gonna sew along the edges at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. So I'm gonna start at one of my marks for my opening and I'm gonna backstitch. And I'm gonna sew at a 3/8 inch seam allowance along the bottom, 3/8 inch seam allowance along the sides until I get up to the seam over here. And then I'm gonna switch it over to a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So before I get to that seam with the exterior, I'm going down to a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then I'm gonna go around the entire exterior at a 1/4 inch seam allowance until I get to the other side. And then once I get back to the lining, I'll increase it again to a 3/8 inch seam allowance all the way to the other mark, and then I'll backstitch. I know that's a lot there. Also, to even add more to this, if you instead wanted to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance on the lining and a 3/8 inch seam allowance on the exterior, I think you'd be okay. I don't think it would reduce the size of the bag that much, but I'm gonna stick with the pattern mostly. Alrighty, once you have that all sewn, you can take your scissors, and I like to cut the corners off, and then I cut off like a more kind of shallow corner as well. So I do like a straight 45-degree cut on the corners, like on the lining side, and then a longer corner cut. I just feel like it helps with those corners. Now on the exterior side, these corners, they're very beefy, okay? So be careful with how much you cut down because so much material pulling on these stitches could become a problem. So you want to cut the corners down a little bit, but not too much. And I will say, if you wanted to play around with boxing these corners, you definitely could. I'm not gonna get into how to do that, but if you have experience with boxed bags, you could definitely box these corners on the lining and the exterior and create a boxed bottom, which is honestly what the book's gonna do anyways. It's gonna create a box bottom. Now the pattern does give you an option to cut out some of the middle pieces of your seams because they are so bulky. However, that would require you unpicking your basting stitches, and honestly, I just don't have the energy for that. So I'm gonna leave them. I feel like they're fine. I'm gonna reach my arm all the way in, and I'm going to pull the exterior out through that hole in the lining. And then I'm gonna reach my hand in through that hole, and I'm going to very carefully poke out the corners on the exterior, and it's a little tricky, again, because it is very bulky. Just take your time, it'll look great. So really take your time massaging those corners. If you want to use your turning wand to really help poke them out, you can. There we go. And then I'm going to shove my lining inside, so I'm not going to close the hole yet. So what I want to do first is top stitch along this top edge. So I like to use the hole in the lining to kind of reach through and push along the seam to get it to look exactly how I want. And then I'm just going to go around the seam and flatten it out and add clips as I go to smooth it out and make it look nice and straight and pretty. Oh my god, did I put that on wrong? No. You guys, I started freaking out. I was like, I put the pocket on the wrong panel. Okay, before you do this, I mean, you can do it afterwards too. My pocket got twisted around. So if you're freaking out like I am, get your pocket right. Okay, it just got flipped to the wrong side. Easy fix, easy fix. No seam ripping required. But I do want to get in there and poke those corners out properly. Okay, now that's how it's supposed to look. So now I can continue flattening out this top seam and using clips and rolling it to get it the way I want it to look. Alrighty, here we go. So the lining might be a little crinkly, don't worry about that. We're just focused on this top edge right now. So now I'm gonna take this to the sewing machine and I'm gonna take the bed off my sewing machine. And I'm gonna pretty much just wrap this around the arm of my sewing machine and top stitch it like that. If you can't do that, you can just top stitch it from the inside. It's just the bobbin thread is gonna show on the outside, or you can flip the bag lining side out and top stitch it from the inside so you are top stitching it on the exterior side. Whatever works for you, but I'm going to just wrap this around my machine and I'm going to top stitch along the top edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Be careful when you go over the side seams and also over that tab, depending on how thick your material is. Go slow, back stitch at the beginning and the end. All right, once the top stitching is done, we're going to pull our lining bottom out. You don't have to pull everything out, just try to get that bottom edge with the opening out here. Push out the seam around the opening to help you get it flat. You can put your fingers in the sides of the opening and then the material will just fold down on itself and clip in place. And if you have a fun little woven label that's like book related, I think this would be a good place for it. I know I have one somewhere, I just don't know where they are. Oh, I do. Look at these. I have so many of these labels, but I do. I have some from Carolina Little Stitches, I believe. Yeah, these are bestie badges, and this one says like book devourer. Since this is for Mila, and oh my gosh, that girl goes through books so quickly. I am gonna use that one here. Okay, so all I have to do is, before I sew this, I'm just going to remove a clip and just carefully insert this into that opening. That's so cute. She's gonna love that. That's so cute. And just slide it in there. There you go. Super easy. So now I'm gonna top stitch right over this opening at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end. Isn't that fun? Okay, let's shove this back in the bag. All right, this is looking so cute. She specifically wanted it for this book she's reading right now, which is called Kingdom of the Wicked. Let's see if it fits. Oh yeah, plenty of space. And I know my Kindle will fit in here too. Let's see if my book fits. I just picked up Onyx Storm, which is a pretty big book, and I don't think it would fit in the small, so I'm hoping it'll fit in this one. Oh yeah, plenty of space. And once again, I can put my Kindle in here, which I'll show you in just a minute. How stinking cute is this? Alrighty guys, here's the size large. Let me get the size small and take the book out of it so we can really see the difference in these sizes. There you go. See, so it is a pretty significant difference. It doesn't seem like it at the time, but it is. So let's see. This is a book I just got in the mail recently. A lot of you might have gotten it as well. It's Onyx Storm. We're all obsessed, I know. This is not going to fit in the size small, just so you know. If this is the book you got, you're not going to make a size small. You're going to want to make a size large because it does fit in the size large with extra room. So the large is definitely quite a bit bigger. So you see, we have plenty of room in there. If you wanted to add like a little notebook or something, like let's see. Oh, here we go. So here's one of my notebooks that I used for all of my ideas and dreams and wishes and hopes. I'm gonna shove that in there with it and it fits. And does it snap? Yes, it snaps. Look at all that. Okay, so now, Kindle. Can we also put the Kindle in this? I'm just gonna slide it right in there. I will say it is a very tight fit because I have that notebook, but it fits. And then we can stick our pens and our little tabs right here. And again, we are all ready. Look at this. This is like me in a nutshell. I have my book, I have my notebook, I have my Kindle, I have my pens and my organization things, and like I can go anywhere. I'm just done. I don't need anything else. This is all I need. So I hope you enjoy making this as much as I do. This is such a great pattern for you to make for yourself, but this is also a great gift idea, especially as we're getting, you know, into the thick of winter and a lot of us are just kind of homebound, doing nothing. This is great for just keeping all of your little bits organized around the house. You know, again, if you're somebody like me who likes to mark in your books and highlight things, this just keeps everything together so you can just put it on the couch, put it next to the table, you know, and it's right there whenever you need it. But of course, for those of you who have said, I am done with the cold and I am going on vacation, this is your vacation book sleeve for sure. This is definitely something I would take on vacation anywhere I go. Because even if I don't read as much as I think I'm going to when I'm on vacation, I'm still going to be doing some reading. Like I will still find time to read and I can just keep it all like this. So there we go. Thank you so much for sewing with me today. I hope you're having a great day. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Get out there and make something. Bye guys.